Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lunchtime with the Librarian. I am Amy Moskowitz, the Reference Manager at the Haverford Township Free Library, and we're here today with Danielle Gowan, one of our youth service librarians. Hi, Danielle.
Hello. Thank you for having me for this.
Of course, we're happy to have you. You've probably seen Danielle from time to time upstairs in the children's room, and today we're going to find out more about her. So Danielle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll tell you, this is my daughter Vivian, who just poked her head in. If you've watched any of my story times online over the past 6 months or so, I'm sure you've seen her a number of times. She enjoys joining me, as you can see. So this is my daughter Vivian. She is 7, about to start 2nd grade. And so let's see a little bit about myself. I grew up in Philadelphia, in a section of Philadelphia called Overbrook, and I went to school out in Western Pennsylvania, so the complete opposite of where I grew up. So the city girl went out to the country. I went to Slippery Rock University, and there I majored in biology and dance. I had a double major in biology and dance. A minor in philosophy. So I'd like to say that I covered the whole mind, body, and soul aspect of the college education. And from there, because I had such a diverse background, I just kind of went along trying to find my way to what I wanted to do. I traveled some. Okay, thank you. I traveled for a little bit after college, and then when I came back, I kind of said, all right, what am I going to do? And I went around trying different things until I landed here many years later. I feel like I graduated college many years ago.
Oh. What do you love most about being a librarian?
And then I had you. Yes, then I had you. I'm sorry, what was that? What do I like most about being a librarian?
Being a librarian, yeah.
So I love most talking with the people. I love talking with them about books that they've loved, books that I love. I love when the kids come in and they get really excited about a book that they found or a book that I recommended, especially when they come back in and tell me that they really like a book that I recommended. It makes me feel like I really shared something personal with them and they liked it. So it's such a good feeling. I love sharing my love of books with people.
What are you doing?
I'm playing with your feet because they're up on my lap.
What did you do before you were a librarian?
A lot. Like I said, after I graduated college, because I had such a wide range of interests, I did a lot of things. I worked in theater. I worked in professional theater for a while at the Walnut Street Theater. I worked in physical therapy. I worked as a seasonal biologist in Arizona for a summer. I worked at a veterinarian's office. I worked at Starbucks while I was in grad school. But the career I had settled on before librarian was I spent about the last 10 years in the environmental science field. So I spent about 8 years working for the State Department of State Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, and 2 years before that working in environmental consulting. So I've been in the environmental field for a while before becoming a librarian.
What drew you to librarianship?
So I always loved literature, especially children's literature. After college, because I felt like I didn't have a really good literature education in high school. I honestly don't remember reading a lot of books in high school. I remember reading parts of a few classics, but not much. So after college, I would always go to the bookstore and I would look at the tables that they had for the summer reading requirements and looking what all the high school kids were required to read, and kind of doing my own catch up there, reading those books and trying to catch up on what I felt like I didn't have. But what really drew me to the library was after I had this one here, after I had Vivian, when she was an infant and young child, I would take her to the library near us for story time, and as a way to, get us both out of the house and interact with other people and other kids. And the librarian there is just so, so wonderful. We would go to the Middletown Free Library, and she would love it there, and I loved it there. And I was like, wow, this is such a great, great environment. This is such a great job. I would love to do something like this. How do I do something like this? It looks like so much fun. Read to kids. I mean, that's like, and get paid for it. Oh my goodness. That was like exactly what I wanted to do. But I spent 3 more years at DEP. And then I said, okay, it's time for me to decide something that I want to do. And I saw the ad for a youth services assistant at Havertown, and lucky enough, the manager there gave me a chance. I was very fortunate that she gave me a chance, because she really changed the path of my whole career by giving me the chance to be a library assistant, because not long after I started, I knew that this was the path I wanted to be on. And I went back to school, got my master's of library science, and here I am now, almost 4 years later, with Havertown, reading to kids.
We're so glad that
I wanted to do.
What are some of your favorite books?
We have Lifetime.
And so my all-time favorite book is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And that's a book that I was required to read in 8th grade. And it's had a place on my bookshelf in some version, one way or the other. But it's still my all-time favorite book.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. So sometimes books that you're required to read in school, they just stay with you.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite genre?
I read a lot of dystopian novels and horror novels. So when I go back and I look at my reading list, I'm like, wow, this is kind of dark. So sometimes when adults ask me for book recommendations, what have you read lately? And I think back what I read, and I was like, wow, if I tell them all the books that I've read, they might think that there's something weird about me. But because I rarely read anything light or humorous. I usually come away from my books feeling a little bit exhausted. But that's what I like to read. That's what I get sucked into. Dystopian novels and horror novels are probably the 2 genres that I read the most.
What were some of your favorite books growing up?
So I still have a love of the books that I was asked to read while in grade school. So while I feel like I didn't have a great literary education in high school, we read a lot in grade school. So some of the books that I read then, I still have a fondness for, and that was like, A Bridge to Terabithia, A Wrinkle in Time, From the Mixed Up Files of Basil E. Frankweiler. Basically all the books that I love being around where I am in the library. The section of the library that I'm in is probably like the perfect spot for me, because those are the books that I love, the ones that I grew up with.
Yeah, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from reading, what are your hobbies?
So I guess I would say naturalism, if you could call that a hobby. So I'm a Pennsylvania master naturalist, which is a volunteer organization that we go through extensive training in naturalism, all sorts of subjects, and then we dedicate our time volunteering to give back that education. So volunteering in the environmental field, in the naturalism field. So I still have my toes in that field, even though I am no longer working in environmental science. So I do a lot of volunteering at the local Arboretum, Tyler Arboretum near me. I'm on their Bluebird monitoring program. So it's a really, I mean, it's a great volunteer job. I walk the Arboretum and I check bluebird nests, and I collect data on how many are nesting, how many eggs have been laid, how many have hatched, how many have fledged, so that we can keep track of the nesting data of bluebirds on the Arboretum as a way to kind of help keep the population of bluebirds healthy. So that's my volunteer job, but my hobbies all kind of stem around that: gardening, birding. I just took an online class last night on how to identify trees in winter when they don't have leaves. So learning, you know, their shape, their bark, their twigs, their buds. And I bring a lot of that background into the programs that I make for the library as well, for the kids. I like to do a lot of nature programs for them. So that's
great.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you like to travel or visit?
Any place that's not too hot. No place that has the extremes of temperatures, too hot or too cold. The summer I spent in Arizona, I was like, no, can't live here. 120 degree weather is not for me. But then the opposite extreme, when I spent some time in Maine in January, it was the extreme. It was the extreme opposite. It was, you know, bone-chilling cold, where you had to wear goggles because the wind made your eyes water and then your eyes froze shut because it was so cold. So anywhere that doesn't have those extreme temperatures. I spent 3 months in Australia after I graduated college, and I would love to go back there again and travel some more. That's probably the first place that I would pick to go back there and travel some more.
Yes, Australia sounds beautiful. I've never been.
It really is.
If you could live in any book universe, what would it be and why?
That was the hardest question. I have no idea. Because I read so much dystopian and horror, I don't want to live in any of the books that I generally read.
No.
They're there to, you know, I want those worlds to stay where they are. I don't want to be in any of them. So if I had to pick one, I mean, I love a lot of fantasy too. So I don't know, maybe the Narnia. I know that sounds kind of like a cliche one, but they, even A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I wouldn't want to live there either. I mean, it's because it's set during the Great Depression. So even though that's my favorite book, I don't want to live at that time either. So I would, maybe The Hobbit. Maybe living in the Shire with the hobbits.
That would be charming.
I'll say that. I'll say The Hobbit.
Okay. Yes, I agree. Do you have a favorite virtual program that we've done in the past 10 weeks? So
I really love watching the Mythical Creatures program that Jules has been doing, her art corner. They are just so interesting. I love learning about the mythical creatures that she's teaching us, and then just watching her draw them, that progress of, because it's a talent that I don't have, and I'm in awe of anybody that can just put lines on a paper and make them look like anything. You know, amazing.
Yeah,
makes it look so easy. She makes it look so easy, and I'm like, why can't I do that? And it's like, no, it's a talent. So it puts together the mythical subject that I like to learn about, but also watching her draw is just amazing. So I have to say that has been my favorite program, Jules' Art Corner.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
What are you reading now?
So I'm reading an ARC right now, which is an advanced reading copy of Shannon Hale's Kind of a Big Deal. So Shannon Hale is a children's author, and she writes picture books, she writes middle grade, she writes YA. She's like the whole spectrum children's literature. And so I'm reading her an advanced reading copy of her new book called Kind of a Big Deal. Yes.
Are you enjoying it?
I'm moving my so I am so far, yes. I just, before I started that, I read an arc of Tiffany D. Hale's new book called Grown, which is kind of a little bit thriller, young adult novel as well. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. So yes.
Good to know. We'll have to keep our eyes open for those.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who wants to be a librarian?
Work in a library. So get the experience. I mean, going from school to the degree is great, but the degree is really just going to give you a lot of like the technical and legal stuff about being a librarian. You really need to work in a library. So volunteer if you have to. Join any part of the library that you can, join their clubs. But I would basically say work in a library if you want to be a librarian, even if you have to volunteer just to shelve books. That'll get you into the environment, get your name known, get your face known, so that when something does come up, you'll be likely to be picked for a job or an internship. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. What do you like about serving the patrons in this community?
So I love building a connection with the people who come into the library. I love getting to know them, that they come in often and they recognize us, that the kids come in and they're excited to be there. Sometimes I see people in stores in the neighborhood and they're like, oh, it's Miss Danielle from the library. Hi. And, so I love building that connection with people, especially with the kids when they come in frequently or regularly and they're excited to be there. That's really how we build lifelong readers and lifelong patrons to the library, is building that connection with the community.
Definitely. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing some information about yourself. It was great to get to know you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Vivian.
And yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm sure everybody wanted to see your open mouth there, right? Yeah.